Wolves take on Arsenal. Samba music playing at the Arsenal training ground because they want to play some fluid, sexy football. But there's a man on the opposition that I think Arsenal will be looking at. Cunha might be having his audition when he takes on Arsenal. Is he the man that Arsenal need?
I'm not so sure. Me and you spoke about it off a few months ago. I think it's quite difficult sometimes when you're looking at players who play for the lower league teams, because a lot of the time I feel like they put themselves in the shop window when they play against the big teams. So they'll shine and they'll do something amazing. And then when you actually look at them throughout the course of the season, they're maybe not quite as good as the highlight reel or match of the day may suggest. I think with Cunha, he's clearly a very, very talented player. But I think there are lots of cases, particularly when it comes to attacking players and particularly when it comes to strikers, where there's a sort of big fish in a small pond and they look absolutely exceptional. And then they go to a new team where probably a little bit more is asked of him. More will be asked of Cunha from Mikel Arteta than is currently asked at Wolves. So I think if I was Arsenal, and I think the problems are clearly the fact that they need someone to put the ball in the back of the net on a very consistent basis, I would be going for someone who is a more proven goal scorer, who's got a few more seasons under their belt, regularly contributing to sort of 15 to 20 goals across the top 5 leagues in Europe.
Yeah, I would agree. And it gets to a point where Arteta was very involved in the recruitment process at Arsenal, right? And in the summer, based on the business that they did, it seemed like he was happy with striking options, which is Kai Havertz. And so it gets to this point in the season, I'm like, coach your way out of it. Rather than stick a plaster over it, coach your way out of it. What did Liverpool do and Arne Slot do when they didn't get their first targets when it comes to centre midfield? He coached his way out of it. He found a solution. And for Arsenal, I think you'll be setting yourself back if you go and spend big money on the likes of a Sesko or Cunha in January and they're not your primary target, because it means you can't go again in the summer because of PSR restrictions. And we know that there's a man at Newcastle I think is a perfect fit for this Arsenal system. So if you go and spend 50, 60 million pounds on Cunha or even more than that because you need a solution right now in a season where you're probably not going to win the league, and when it comes to summer you want to go for the player that you need for this team, you won't be able to afford to do it. So my advice to Arteta, if he's watching this, is coach your way out of this, because the business is done. The real business is done at big football clubs in the summer. When have you ever seen a football club do business in January to try and win the league? It doesn't happen. It's never happened.
Could you possibly say, though, this might be one of the rare occasions in a Premier League season where we've all said, I think actually Kweku hasn't, but we've said Liverpool are running a bit hot, and something could go wrong and Arsenal needs to be ready to pounce.
Well, we actually mentioned it last week as well, didn't we? I'm not sure that Cunha is the answer, but I do think that Arsenal have had, over the last 3 years, quite good chances to win the Premier League. I do think that this is their best chance, because Arne Slot is obviously, this is his first season at Liverpool. They are playing fantastic football. They've been by far the best team in the league. But there will be a point where they start to falter. That is just natural. I don't think that Liverpool can win pretty much every game from here on out. And Arne Slot has never really dealt with these particular players during a bad run of form. So we don't know how that rocky patch is going to affect Liverpool. I also think this has probably been the worst standard of the Premier League in the top 4-5 teams. I think City are by far worse. I think Liverpool are not as good as they were under Jurgen Klopp. And I don't think that, when you're talking about Nottingham Forest and Newcastle, they're the closest contenders. And I don't think that they're at the level of certain title races, particularly we've seen over the last sort of 5 or 10 years. So I think this is an unbelievable chance for Arsenal to win the league. They're only 7 points behind now. It's not going to take that much for them to get back level with Liverpool if they have a little bit of a rock. And I think it's very, very clear that the only problem that they're struggling with, maybe left wing as well, but I think they can probably just about get around that with playing a few players out of position. I think the only problem that they have is that they just don't have a killer. So I do think that if they do go into the January transfer window, as I said, I don't think Cunha is the man, but if they do go and they do get a killer, that could propel them to the title.
I think also, I agree with your point that if they go now, they probably can't go again. But if you go and win the league, you can go again. And I think they've got to assess this and go, and I think if you look at their results, they're probably maybe 5 goals short from now till the end of the season if you work it out against Liverpool's front six. It's why people go like Liverpool will score more goals. They don't say that because Liverpool have 3 guys who are going to score 30. It's because they can just stack the goals up. Like Diaz will contribute 5 or 6. Gakpo will contribute 5 or 6. Now Chiesa might go and contribute 2 or 3. Arsenal don't
Chiesa.
Hey, the boy's cooking. The boy's cooking something. We're going to be talking about Liverpool at some point, I hope. But I think Arsenal don't have that reliability in terms of goals getting stacked up. Martinelli's not going to score that many. Trossard probably will have a purple patch. So in a lot of ways, I agree with you. But then I also go, if you want to just tip yourself over the edge, go and spend 40, 50 million if you have to on Cunha.
I suppose my argument would be that you could go spend that money, you still ain't going to win the league. I understand that Liverpool are running hot, but this is also a team that, if you're telling me they're running hot both in the Premier League and the Champions League, then I want to run as hot as Liverpool, because they are by far the best team in Europe. Like, we put Real Madrid as the gold standard, right? They came to Anfield and got bossed by Liverpool. Liverpool are just better than everybody, and they're better than Arsenal. And Arsenal can go and bring in as many reinforcements as they want, but Arsenal aren't as good as they were last season, and Liverpool are way better than they were last year. And I don't think that this 6-point gap, which is actually a 9-point gap if Liverpool win their game in hand.
Everton away at the Goodison with David Moyes in charge.
Come
Tough
on, man.
game.
David
that-
Moyes.
that's a tough
like,
game.
I think City just went there, drew 0-0. Chelsea went there, drew 0-0.
Yeah, Arsenal
so
drew as well.
Arsenal drew 0-0. So it's the last one at Goodison Park.
Yeah.
It's David Moyes.
But then
back.
that's predicated on Liverpool dropping points and Arsenal winning all their games. It's not happening. It's not happening.
Yeah.
As for Wolves, if Cunha does leave this window, there's a certain man on this table who thinks they're going to go down anyway. Where does that leave them?
I mean, yeah, I think Wolves are down. I think
Even with Cunha?
even with Cunha, I think they're down. I think it's clear to me that Southampton and Leicester are just not of the requisite quality at all. I think they'll definitely both go down. And then I think really you're only choosing between Ipswich and Wolves. And I think what Ipswich have, which Wolves don't have, because if you look at the 11 side by side, in terms of quality, you'd say that Wolves have a better side. But I do just feel like Ipswich have a bit more heart. They have a bit more grit. And I think they're very, I know it's weird to talk about them when they just ship 6 at home to City, but they do have strong, solid defenders, and they can put their bodies on the line in a way that I haven't really seen Wolves do yet. I think Wolves have better players, but if I was to pick any 3 teams to go down, it would be them alongside Southampton and Leicester.
I would agree with you as well. It's just because of the amount of goals they ship. So they conceded 51 goals this season in 22 games. That's 2.3 goals per game. And they're on course, I think, if they carry on at this record, to concede 88 Premier League goals.
Yep.
The record for most goals conceded in the season was last year, Sheffield United, 104. And then the Derby team, 07-08, conceded 89. If Wolves carry on, they're going to see one less goal than that Derby team that are infamous for being terrible. They're terrible defensively.
The one thing you would say is they did have Gary O'Neill as manager for most of the season. He played in games where it'd be like they're losing 2-1. He'd still throw an attacker on and they lose 3 or 4-1.
But then in the last 3 games, they've conceded 3 goals in each of those games.
True.
They've conceded 3 goals against a Chelsea team that were on their knees. Chelsea hadn't won in the last 5 games. This Wolves team don't, like you said, Kim, they have no heart. They have no desire to play for each other. And then when you hear Vitor Pereira, the manager, coming out and criticising Cunha's body language and then criticising Lamina, and then there's so much noise going on there, I just think that they will capitulate and eventually they will go down because they're not fighting for each other, whereas a team like Ipswich, like you said, are.
All right. Also, if you play FPL or other versions of fantasy football, Wolves have conceded a league high of 13 goals from defenders, and Arsenal's Gabriel and Saliba love a goal, so I'd get them in, and thankfully for me, I got both. Kweku, predictions for this one?
Yeah, Arsenal win this one 4-0.
4.
Well, I was going 4-0 as well, so I'm going to stick with that, yeah.
4 is a lot. For Arsenal to score 4 is a lot. I think 2-0, definitely a goal from a set piece.